Hi there, everyone. This is Dan Dix here, reporting for Press for Truth. Today is Wednesday, March 18th, 2015. And as you can see here, we have some good news to report on today in regards to Bill C-51. We have an article out today. New poll shows C-51 support rapidly declining. This is just out from our new PFT staff writer, Eva Shield. Stay tuned, guys. She's got great analysis, a lot of great research. We're going to have a lot more coming from her soon. And today she writes, despite various polls and articles coming out to suggest that Canadians are growing in their support for C-51, it looks like the situation is quite the opposite. Following the National Day of Action against Bill C-51 on March 14th, where thousands of people took to the streets in protest, many Canadians have continued to speak out and voice their concerns over this unjust and unnecessary piece of legislation. Now, thankfully, results of a new survey suggest that the Canadian people are not buying into the fear rhetoric like the Harper administration would like them to. Now, check out these numbers that are really, really encouraging here, coming from the Forum Research poll, which demonstrated that support for the bills stands now at roughly 45%, whereas earlier polls suggested that the approval was around 82%. That is quite a big difference. And the approval is expected to drop even further. Now, of course, not everyone who has heard of this bill is completely aware of what exactly the piece of legislation entails. Of those asked, roughly 70% said that they were familiar with the proposals in the bill, and support from them dropped even further for C-51. Now, only 31% of those 70 who were familiar with the proposals in the bill said that they still support it. Now, unfortunately, there's still a decent amount of people who don't know what the bill is or what it entails. But thus far, British Columbia, the Prairies, and Atlantic Canada have proven to be the most opposed to this anti-terror piece of legislation. And I can agree with that. I was there covering the rally just a few days ago. We interviewed the head of the BC Civil Liberties Association about the history of Canadian spies. I'll put a link to that in the description. We also put out a video called Nationwide Rallies Against Bill C-51, Defend Our Freedom. I'll put a link in that as well so you can see for yourself that, yeah, probably around 1,000 people showed up. It was a really, really good turnout. So I'm really glad I was able to be there to cover it. Now, I will say this, though, about the rally in regards to organization and who's putting this on, and just really how this has been going all across the country. I reached out to some of the organizers because, for some of you who may know, we've been covering Bill C-51 since as far back as 2011, back when it was called Lawful Access. And, right as soon as it became Bill C-51, we were all over this, telling people about it. So I can speak extensively on this topic, and invited my services, offered myself to do promo videos to promote this, to be able to speak at the event if they would like me to speak. As I said, I've been covering this for years now, so I have a lot I could say about it, and offered to help. And you would think that they would welcome me with open arms, but unfortunately I did not get much of a response from the organizers of this nationwide rally. And a lot of people are suggesting that Lead Now has a lot of globalist ties, and I do find it interesting. If you look at some of these rallies all across the nation, there's a lot of similarities in the protests that were going on. At every single one of these things, there was somebody representing the Indigenous women. There was somebody representing the Muslim community. There was always a very strong anti-Harper message with no kind of talk of what would replace such a thing. And, you had your typical communist, socialist kind of factions coming out. And we saw the same thing out here on the left coast, the west coast. And so there's certainly some interesting things going on in the organization of this, and it's kind of shocking that they wouldn't welcome me with open arms, as I said, as somebody who's been covering this extensively and working hard to expose what C-51 is. You would think they'd want me to be there, but nonetheless, they didn't, but we went there and covered this thing anyways. And as I said, all kinds of different groups from all kinds of different factions were there. And the point is, the good news about all of this today is, despite whether we're coming from and if you're on the left or the right, the bottom line is people who are on the fence about this issue learned about it because of this nationwide rally. And now we have these kind of new and exciting numbers that we can report on here. Eva Shields closes off this article by stating that from law professors and former Canadian prime ministers to security experts and human rights advocates, many good people are reasonably concerned about this bill and about the sanctity of due process in this country, a value which this bill aims to erode. Unfortunately, one big obstacle is getting people to appreciate the fruitlessness that is this Bill C-54, is the fear that resides in many people's lives. And she points out that when we statistically should be more afraid of bee stings, bathtubs, cars, lightning, swimming pools, knives, and pharmaceutical medications than we should ever fear being a victim of any kind of terrorist attack, then it seems wildly unjust and baffling, really, to propose such overreaching legislation as Bill C-51. So once again, guys, great news coming out today that we are having an effect, so all of our efforts have certainly not gone unnoticed. So keep fighting the good fight, my friends, and if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to us here on YouTube. Also, check us out on Instagram, follow us on Twitter to keep up to date with what we're doing on a daily basis, as well as our Facebook page. And stay tuned to Press for Truth, guys. We're going to have a lot more video reports coming very soon, right here at pressfortruth.ca.